Hello and welcome to YouMatter. Hi there and welcome back to episode 16. It's a really special episode. It's a combined episode with Grainne Donnelly and Emma Brockwell, who are involved in all sorts of things to do with women's health. If you're a women's health physiotherapist, then you will undoubtedly have heard their names associated with some amazing research, some guidelines about returning to sport after pregnancy, both very, very, very well known and respected names in this field. They also run the At Your Cervix podcast. And so this is a kind of At Your Cervix, YouMatter mashup podcast. And we discuss all sorts of things on this episode. We talk about really interesting topics within the world of physiotherapy. We're talking about collaboration, when it works, when it doesn't, how you make sure there's something in it for both of you or all of you. We talk about comparison and competition, finding your clinical lane, and more importantly, staying in it. We pick our way somewhat nervously through the idea of some stereotypically male and female traits, and try to work out where that fits within the sort of archetype and identity of a clinician. So all sorts of things. It's an absolutely great chat. I really hope you enjoy it. And as ever, I'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts after the episode. So sit back, make yourself a big cup of tea today, enjoy, and I will see you at the end. Hello, so welcome to what we've decided to call a very special podcast session or episode, and it is At Your Cervix meets YouMatter. And that probably requires a little bit of explanation. Firstly, it means that I am here with the lovely Grainne and Emma from At Your Cervix podcast, and we decided to do this session together after it was when I'd actually listened to their last episode of At Your Cervix, or I don't know if it was the last one or maybe the one before that. So Emma and Grainne interviewed Molly Galbraith and Marika Hart about their organisation called Girls Gone Strong. And I'll get Emma and Grainne to explain a little bit more about that. But it was towards the end of that podcast where Molly was talking about the book she'd written. And correct me if I'm wrong, girls, but I think it's called Ladies Who Lift Each Other Up. Is that right?
Strong Women.
Strong Women. Yeah, as I said, ladies, like, oh, that sounds right. Yes, God, she'd hate that, wouldn't she? Sorry, Molly. Strong women who lift each other up.
Yeah, strong women lift each other up.
Strong women lift each other. And I remember her describing how she'd seen was it like a banner for a talk she was a conference she was at or something, and it said strong women, and then she just had this vision of strong women lift each other up. And it really resonated with me because some of the journey I've been through into coaching is actually through a women's organisation, and a lot of the things Molly was saying reminded me of the things we've been talking about women collaborating and the barriers to that, where it's successful, where it's less successful. And so I got straight on and messaged Grainne and Emma and said, well, we should do a joint podcast. And Grainne said, that's funny, because we were just saying the same thing after we'd come off it ourselves. So we decided that we would get together and talk about this topic sort of in the context of women clinicians, but clinicians in general. Is that a fair summary? Is that your guys' recollection? It was a few months ago now, wasn't it?
I think that's a very fair summary. And we were planning to talk and plan for about half an hour, and it turned into about an hour and a half conversation. Right. But it was a few months ago because I had to annoyingly reschedule. So I'm sorry about that, Joe. But we finally made dates work. So it's really exciting to talk to you and hear more about what you do, because I think listeners in our community will be really interested to hear about what you offer clinicians as well. So if it's all right, if we can cover that as well, that would be
amazing. Yeah, let's all introduce ourselves, because likewise my listeners probably have discovered your podcast. I hope they have. If you haven't, then go and check it out. But yeah, if we all introduce ourselves to each other's listeners, that's probably helpful, isn't it? So yeah, I'm Jo Turner, and I have been a physiotherapist for when I started this spiel, it was 25 years. I think it's 26 years now. A long time. And I've always been a very happy physiotherapist, but there were things in my career that, just looking back, I wish I'd had more support and encouragement over, really. I was always someone that was full of ideas and wanting to start things, and often did end up starting them off my own back. But I just, looking back, would have liked a bit of kind of wind beneath my wings sometimes. And I got to a point in my career about 5 or 6 years ago where just a whole list of patients all day, for some reason, just suddenly seemed like a mountain to climb that it hadn't seen before. And it was probably because there was a lot going on outside of work as well. It was just kind of a perfect storm moment. So I took myself away a little bit and did quite a lot of personal development with this women's leadership organisation. Really enjoyed just being away from physio for a while, and focusing on myself, quite frankly, and doing some things for myself. But the more I learned and the more I talked to other women on the courses, who actually were quite often medical as well, I met loads of doctors and lawyers, strangely. It just occurred to me how much of this stuff was relevant to our world as clinicians. So I then went on to train as a coach with that organisation. It's called One of Many. And even then I thought, okay, I'm either changing career or having a midlife crisis or something. I didn't really know what I was doing with it, but I was just really enjoying the coach training. And then it just started to dawn on me that, well, the obvious thing is to marry my two worlds. I never hated physio. I just I just needed a break from it. I needed to look at it a bit more objectively. So I decided I would use the coaching to coach clinicians, and hopefully, I don't know, I want to say kind of right some of the wrongs, which is absolutely not what I mean. Maybe just try and fill in some of the gaps that I had felt myself. And my ultimate aim is to try and create a network of support for all levels of clinicians, ideally from student days right up to, well, beyond retirement, if you like, so that, wherever you're at, whatever your ideas at, or whatever struggles you're having, there's some kind of support beyond the mentoring and what's your next career move, what's the next course you should do, which is all relevant, but just something a little bit more general to your own well-being. So I created an organization called MeHab, which offers a combination of coaching, conversation, a lot of online conversation and courses. And that's just kind of the start, really, of my vision for this big network. And part of that is also the YouMatter podcast, of course. There you go. That's me. So yeah, would you two do the same for my listeners? Just let me know a little bit about how you two came to do what you're doing.
Yeah, wow, how brilliant. I'll go first because my surname starts with B and yours starts with D. There we go. That's a nice way to start, isn't it? I mean, my name's Emma, and I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist. And I have been a physio for around about, 15, 16 years. And I don't think I did like physio, if I'm honest. I think for the first 7 or 8 years of my career, I felt really uncertain about whether I should continue it as a career, because in all honesty, I'd leave clinic most days thinking I wasn't good enough. I didn't compare anywhere near as good to my peers, or that was my perception. And I often used to find some days, especially, those days where you just feel like you're not getting anyone better. It used to really affect my confidence when I was having days like that. And that would then have a knock-on effect to my personal life as well. So I really, really struggled in the first 7 or 8 years of my career. And I probably had quite a lot going on as well personally. So I suspect, it wasn't just physio causing that. And I put a lot of blame on that. I've not really reflected too much as to why it didn't quite fit for me. But it just didn't. And that was when I was a musculoskeletal physiotherapist. And then I started looking down the world of women's health. And I can't really remember what took me down that road exactly. I think I had an amazing friend called Lisa Few, who was a women's health physiotherapist. And we started speaking about women's health physiotherapy, and the way she spoke about it was quite inspiring. And I thought, I can maybe make a bit of a difference here. So I started to just tip into that world, really thanks to her. And then I fell pregnant. And from my pregnancy and then onwards, I don't know, you just have that light bulb moment. Things just clicked. And the reason I'd always gone into physiotherapy is because I loved working with people and I really wanted to help get people better. But I guess for a long time, it just hadn't felt that that's what was happening for me. Whereas in the world of women's health, I don't know, it just felt like that final connection had been made. I felt more confident. I still have days, weeks, ask Grainne, where I just don't feel like I'm getting it. And I think that's my personality in part. And it is challenging. It's challenging for those around me and it's challenging for me. And I guess if you want to coin it imposter syndrome, I suffer terribly from it and I do really struggle with it. So someone like you, Jo, I mean, my goodness, how many times have I said to you, every time I speak to you, I need to talk to you. I need some sessions with you. And then typically just life is bonkers. I have 2 children and a stepdaughter. And I'm trying to always upskill myself in the worlds of pelvic health and do amazing projects with Grainne. I'm so lucky that I think, in all honesty as well, I should say that my passion for pelvic health is driven a lot by working with Grainne, because she does inspire me. And don't sit there going, because it's true. You really do inspire me. You make me think. You challenge me, sometimes too much. And it's I'm very lucky because I have that world of clinical work, but I also have a different world now where we run Active Cervix. I've done some research led by Grainne, and I do some social media stuff as well. So I've got lots of things that I enjoy, and I do a bit of writing as well. So there's lots of different facets to what I like to do that seem to give me the perfect blend of what I need. So that was a very long-winded answer, but that's in a nutshell who I am, I guess.
Yeah, it's so relevant, and thanks, Emma, because the honesty of saying, listing all those things, which quite frankly, a lot of people at home will be listening, going, "Oh my God, she does all that stuff. How can she not have bulletproof confidence?" But then to openly admit that that's not the case. But also, I don't know if you describe it in these terms, but it sounds like that point where you found women's health. It sounds like you found your tribe, and then. Yeah. In Grainne, you found the person in that tribe who, I just wrote it down. You said, she makes me think, she challenges me, she inspires me. Emma's holding up a heart for Grainne. if you're not watching it. Yeah, I mean, let's come back to that. But those 3 things, making me think, challenging me and inspiring me, that's maybe they're not the go-to things you would automatically think of when you think, this is a conversation about women lifting each other up. But goodness me, I think that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
How to follow you too, jeepers.
I think you'll be fine, Grainne.
I think you'll be all right.
So my name's Grainne Donnelly, and I'm an advanced physiotherapist, and I'm based in Northern Ireland in the UK. And I think that's one of the funny things, because me and Emma do so much work together, but we live nowhere near each other. And I guess now reflecting on how you have introduced yourself and your journey and some of those, I suppose, obstacles you've come across along the way, I've always felt like a bit of a black sheep at times in my profession, particularly when I started out. And I knew that I initially went into physiotherapy thinking I wanted to be the next sports physio. So that's what drew me into it. And I didn't even realize that physio involved hospital stuff. Like, I was so naive, and honest to gosh, I grew up with tunnel vision. And I remember going to university and being like, they're talking a lot about hospitals here. When do we get to, like, what's this? But I didn't particularly enjoy certain aspects of it. I liked it, but I knew it wasn't going to be for me, certain aspects of physiotherapy. And I actually was still convincing myself that I wanted to do musculoskeletal physiotherapy. And I kind of, because that seemed to be the trendy thing to want to do, and that's what all my peers at the time wanted to do, I had set myself, this is where I want to go. I want to get my rotations done. I want to specialize in musculoskeletal. And one of my rotations, I got sent to the maternity hospital. We were just rostered down automatically, and I tried to swap out with everybody. Nobody would swap out. And it was such a laughing point that I was going to the maternity hospital for 6 weeks or for 6 months. And that was my turning point. So this was before I was married, had kids, anything like that. I was very young in my career, and I decided that I really liked this area. It just was musculoskeletal, but for a taboo area. And I felt we could do a lot to help people. And when I kind of started to think about specializing down that area, again, I got a lot of slagging for that. I got a lot of, not resistance, but people thought it was very funny that I was going into this area. And it would have been easier for me to go, no, actually, I'm going to still stay like a sheep and follow everybody else and do what they want to do. But I knew that wasn't for me. So I went against the grain and went into pelvic health. But all I did feel like it was a wee bit like the black sheep. But I'm glad I did now, because this is the area that I do really, really enjoy and love. But I think that black sheep aspect, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this as it goes on, I think that black sheep aspect comes out at times, because I do feel in our profession, you need to find your tribe, and you're looking to find like-minded people who are supportive, because a lot of the times I do feel like people by nature don't seem to like to support people. I think there's a real competitive streak in people. There's a real cut people down. And I probably in my upbringing don't understand that, because I'm like, you just support people, you champion people. So I don't actually understand the mentality of not doing that. And then that's when I feel like a black sheep again, when people are not supportive. So that's my snapshot introduction.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Grainne. Let's pick up on the black sheep thing, because I mean, one thing, language is so important, isn't it? One thing I noticed in that is you clarified at the end there that you were describing something that you felt not particularly happy with. And when you say people are competitive, let's be honest, we're talking about clinicians, aren't we? Clinicians can be competitive. And yet your immediate thing is to turn that on yourself and make you a black sheep.
Yeah, exactly. And that again is, I think, a lot of human nature is to make the problem about you and challenge yourself. When I suppose reflecting back on it, I know the decisions I've made have been the right decisions for me, and I know that I've enjoyed where they have taken me. And even the collaboration, like meeting Emma, was such a random thing. We often say that it's a good job we don't live closer to each other, because we'd probably never get any work done, because it's just one of those people who you kind of know, but you don't, you know what I mean? Like we kind of just got off on the same vibe straight away, which has always been really good. And probably to that point where we're at that stage where we are honest with each other, and that's probably the type of things, like, we don't just always tell each other what we want to hear. We're quite good at, I suppose, telling people how it is, which I think is really important in any working and friendship relationship.
Yeah, and that's obviously, Emma, one of the things you particularly value in Grainne. You said she challenges me sometimes more than I want.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's good because relationships evolve. Our Grainne, the relationship Grainne and I have is very different to the relationship we had when we first met. And you almost put up a bit of a front, don't you? You don't quite let all the walls down when you first meet someone, but by I guess just not coincidence, but just through time, quite a lot's happened to me in the past few years since I've been friends with Grainne, some quite big personal things. And if I'd ever, and I wouldn't have done, but if I'd ever mentioned those at the beginning, she might have thought, oh my goodness, who is this woman? Whereas as time's gone on, you start becoming not just a colleague, but you do become a friend. You do start saying, this very morning, I texted Grainne and I said, oh my goodness, I'm not going to have much conversation, I don't think, for this podcast recording, because I've just had some bad news. And, amazing. The first thing she said to me was, oh, that's awful. She knows the history behind it. And the first thing she said was, shall I just take this? Shall I just do this on my own? And I would never, ever let someone down that late notice. I would never expect for her to do that, but deep down I know I could if I really wanted to. And that's where a working relationship becomes really powerful, because you can, when you can really rely on someone. And I do feel that I can really rely on her. And yes, she challenges me. Sometimes she tells me I'm being an idiot, or I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing that wrong, or how about, look, let's just go move on to the next project. This girl works like no one else you've met, as you can well imagine, Jo. And sometimes I think I'd like a little rest, but Grainne is like, no, we haven't got time for a rest. But honestly, I would sit back and rest on my laurels a little bit more, I think, if it wasn't for Grainne. So there's so many good reasons that being challenged is helpful, and sometimes I don't like what she tells me, but at the same time, the good stuff, you have to accept the bad stuff with the good stuff as well. And hopefully she accepts my badness for my goodness, I hope.
Of course, Emma, of course.
Sounds like we're married.
She's been cancelling.
We're not.
Yeah, no, I get that. And Grainne, you might want to reflect on your own sort of views around that challenge. But I was just thinking, I've been called, have I been called challenging? Sometimes called scary, which is
scary. I cannot imagine this.
In my clinic, there were 3 Joes at one point, and there was blonde Joe, smiley Joe, and scary Joe, and I was scary Joe.
You were not.
Trust me, if you met the other 2, you'd realise they'd set the bar so high that I had no chance of getting over it. But the scary, I accept it, because for me, my scariness is that I'm so curious about people, and I want them so badly to do what I see they're capable of, that I will challenge them, hopefully in a positive way. But often it's extreme curiosity about what might be there for them, and also an absolute passion to support them to get to that place. And yes, that probably feels challenging at times. And actually, that was one of the things I loved when I was doing the work with One of Many, that I suddenly found that there were these women who I created really good friendships with, but in the midst of a conversation where we were just laughing around and supporting each other, perhaps through something, like you were saying, Emma, this morning, something that happened that you might find your friends say, oh God, this thing's happened, and they would support you, and then there'd be quite a strong challenge within it, along the lines of, okay, so what's the next step then? And that kind of combination for me of, yeah, I hear you, that sounds really tough, pause, okay, and now what? That kind of challenge to me is a really strong relationship and a strong challenge.
Yeah, I agree. How do you, so basically the role that you play is to support other colleagues, but who supports you?
Good question. Yeah, and it's a very fair question. Sometimes it's other coaches, and I recognize most people who are coaches recognize that they need a coach as well. And yeah, it's a great question, Emma, because I wanted to do this kind of work for ages, but I thought I had to either suffer really badly, a bit like thinking you can't write a novel unless you've had some terrible life scenario to draw on, or I had to have my life completely together, because otherwise who the hell was I to sit here and advise other people on their life? And I realized 2 things. Firstly, that I completely misunderstood coaching, because you're not there to advise, and in fact you have to constantly try and withdraw your advice. There's a lovely chap, a very experienced American coach, Michael, can't remember his surname at the moment, but he says beware the advice monster. So coaching actually is about trying to draw out from somebody, help them find their way through their own struggles and find their own path, rather than what you think is the right thing for them. And also, more on a personal level, I just realized that there was never going to be a point where I would be comfortable putting myself out there as some kind of paragon of having my, excuse my language, shit together, because I haven't.
You're human.
Yes, I'm incredibly human at times. And now that I'm in that place, it feels much, I keep using the word, but it feels much stronger, because I don't have to fear being found out that, oh, I never shout at my kids, or my husband and I have this perfect relationship all the time, or whatever, or even that my career is always 100% stable. I don't have to pretend that, and I'm not scared of that coming out, because that isn't normal. And from that place, I can comfortably coach, because I'm not advising, I'm kind of running alongside.
I love that.
I can't remember what the question was. Did I answer it?
Yeah, no, I think you did. It's just really, well, yeah. I mean, I just want, just about who supports you, really.
Right,
But you answered that, because you use the support of other coaches.
and also friends. I mean, I've always been a friend gatherer. I don't know where, when you're from an early age, my mum and dad used to comment that I was always surrounded by friends, and I think I just had this inherent understanding that I kind of needed people, and a variety of men and women as well. I've always found it really helpful to have lots of different people as friends, and I do ask for help, not always early enough, like everybody, and not always in the right places. Like, I have no problem asking for help about personal things with my friends. It's taken me a long time as a business owner to understand that I can actually ask for help at work as well. Perhaps some of the people that have worked with me over the years might listen to what I've just said and think, not sure that was always the case at work, Jo, that you were happy to share when things weren't so great there. And it wasn't. It's probably in more recent times that I've realized that even that is okay at the right time.
Yeah. I wish I'd had you in my life when I had been a lost physio, really. Because I'm interested to know how you would manage someone like me way back. And actually, I'm going to be honest, still now. That horrible self-doubt. Why are you laughing, Grainne?
I'm just laughing.
That horrible self-doubt, that thought that everyone's so much better than me, I'm a rubbish clinician, I don't want to do this anymore because it's just affecting my confidence inside and outside of work. Where do you even go with someone like me? Am I a lost hope?
Totally. I'd never take you on, Emma. I mean, from what I've heard, quite frankly, wouldn't even go there.
Don't blame you.
No. Extremely common presentation.
Is it in physio quite a common presentation?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm doing this podcast will probably 24 podcast will probably have happened by the time this one goes out, but lots of you listening will know that YouMatter is doing this 24-hour podcast, and I've decided to talk about some common things that I've come across coaching clinicians over the last couple of years. And that feeling that everybody else reads more research than them, is better at business than them if they're in private practice, gets all their patients better. It's almost endemic, I would say, and goes with the territory. But to answer your question as to where I would go with that, I won't coach you live on this podcast, Emma, but the process would be a little bit of investigation as to, does this remind you of times in the past at school, within friendships, within other relationships? What does it remind you of in your past, to just try and create a bit of awareness of that? But then I guess the most significant thing about coaching is that you're trying to move someone out of a situation they're currently in which doesn't feel comfortable to somewhere which feels inspiring and better. So we would look, okay, so what is it you actually want to move towards, and get you to describe that and feel that, and then come back and say, well, okay, let's look at what steps need to be in place, and equally what doesn't need to be there. What is serving you and what isn't. And I'm never going to sit there and just say, well, don't think that, Emma, because that's silly and that's not serving you. And that definitely wouldn't be coaching, but helping you almost get to the point where, okay, well, if I want that thing that badly, this is what I've got to do to get it. And almost that becomes completely irrelevant. And actually, that before we came online, we were talking a little bit, weren't we, about Molly's book and those some of the points she made. And now you reminded me of it, Emma. Molly mentioned one of the tips that she gives people is basically to sort themselves out before they think about collaborating She was talking about with other women, but that really hit home for me, this idea that, and you guys give me your opinions in a minute, but I think collaboration, particularly between women, is an extremely tricky area. We all give a hell of a lot of lip service to it, and we all claim to want it. And when we get in it, it often goes a bit wrong. And it's quite upsetting, isn't it? Because it should be, society tells us, our natural place, as go back to prehistoric times. We're the ones about communication. Our greatest fear is being thrown out the tribe. We're going to do everything we can to stay within it. And yet sometimes it gets really uncomfortable. Grainne touched on competitive nature, and I really agree that is a trait within clinicians, or particularly physios, as we all are. I don't know, what do you have any views on that idea of collaboration and women?
I think what you said about lip service is definitely something I see, particularly with social media in this day and age. Everyone's shouting about the fact that they support other people and that they really have your back and they love to see other people do well. But in the reality of it, the more I have been in this world, the more I see that it's not as genuine as the message that's been put out. And I just do see time and time again where people nearly resent other women doing well. I honestly, it baffles me. And people just hate to see other, and it's probably an inert, it's more a reflection on their lack of being settled, that they're not the one doing whatever it is. But like, the world's a big place and everyone can follow and their dreams and do what they want to do. And one of the things that's really lost on me is that a lot of the times when any of us females or our peers do well, I wish people could see it for what it is, and the fact that it actually reflects really well on all of us. So it's a win for the women, it's a win for the tribe, it's a win for all of us. So that idea of being genuinely happy and supporting someone's success should be the case, because it actually has positive implications for all of us in that. And I wish that was more of the mainstream message getting out there. How do you feel about it, Emma?
Oh, it's exactly the same, and it's something that is one of, certainly something we discuss a lot, Grainne and myself. It is a challenge because it does kind of it taints your achievements. There is this, I've certainly seen it more so. I mean, I've only very much dabbled in academia. Grainne's heading that way much more so, but it's happening in academia as well. You see it, and there's these competitive tribes, if you like, and the complexity of that is if we were all working collaboratively, we would get much stronger messages across to the people we serve, our patients. Let's be honest, I mean, I'm certainly in this to improve women's care and health and welfare. And yes, I use social media, for example, as a medium to do that, but I don't make
quite brilliantly, I should say, from what I see.
Thanks. But I don't make any money on it. I do it because as well as, of course, I want to promote my business and the work that I do it because I'm sick to death of hearing in clinic these poor women who have been putting up with these symptoms for far too long. I've just done a recent reel where it's literally, it's things that we all hash out all the time, but just shouting out about the fact that it's okay if you've had pelvic floor dysfunction for 7 years, you can still get treatment. There's still this this message that I hear from women in clinic. Oh, well, I'm 7 years postnatal, I've been leaking urine for 7 years, I presume I can't do anything about it. And these are really simple messages that we should be getting out there as professionals, to say, hey, no, that's not okay, and you can get treated at any point, at any time, and we're here to help you. But sometimes there is a little bit of backlash when you have your face out there and you're doing all of these things, and it comes from a really good place while you're doing these things, but sometimes some of the comments you read or the underlying messages aren't positive from not just other colleagues or clinicians, but the audience that you're serving. And that's really difficult, because then you start thinking, oh, maybe I won't bother then. maybe what I'm doing isn't right. And I think Grainne and I have seen that a lot. We had some really lovely success with our return to running guidelines, and I've got to say the response has been in general just incredibly powerful and positive and really exciting. But there has been a few little occasions where we've had some negative responses, competitive responses, and that's just really sad, because actually I would say Grainne and I just want to work with anyone collaboratively to promote the messages we're trying to get out there. So I do sometimes think, if we focus less on competition and more on collaborating with each other, genuinely collaborating with each other, we would achieve what we've all set out to do, and that's to change and improve the health of, in our case, women. So yeah, I struggle with it. It massively affects my confidence, and it massively affects my want to do what I love doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would be the difference in the messaging, Emma, if you got a response to something you'd done that was, was received with a competitive edge to it? What would it be about those comments that sound competitive rather than collaborative? Sorry, that puts you on the spot a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Trying to think how I can use an example without over highlighting it and making anyone aware of
it. No, definitely not a personal, don't just quote anybody.
Well, actually there was this one person. Oh goodness, that's a really tricky one.
It would be more just the disregard, or maybe because I suppose like the direction and a lot of the work that Emma and I have been doing, we probably didn't realize that collaborating and putting out, that's how we met. We basically, me and Emma, we knew each other, we were following each other on social media, and then when I was chatting with Tom Goom, and we decided that there was no information for postpartum women. He was getting a lot of questions on his courses. He didn't specialize in perinatal health, and we decided, well, will we put something out? And it was starting as probably we're going to do like a fact sheet or like a blog, very casual. Let's talk about this. Then we were like, Tom had been connecting with Emma too, so we was like, we'll bring Emma along, can we? And we got that sorted, and we were like, right, this is great, we're going to do a collaborative approach. And we started to look into this topic and scope the research, and then we realized, oh my goodness, they're not even studying females, never mind perinatal women, and this is a huge issue. And like, what are we basing all our information on? So we got into a deeper hole the more we dug, and we decided, you know what, you can't just do a simple blog, it doesn't do it justice. So the guidelines just kind of snowballed, and they developed, and we put them out into the public domain because, one, we wanted to get all the information out, and two, that was the best medium that we were going to get to use to put them out. And we probably didn't expect the scale of the response. They went international because there's a hunger for this information, and there's a lack of information out there. And we had done a lot of expert consensus with people before putting them out. So they were done pretty well and robustly, despite not being through the peer review process. So much so that they've been translated into a couple of languages, which is really exciting as well. Oh. But that's what led to our collaborations and getting into research, and really opened a lot of doors into, I suppose, the journey we took from there. And we know the impact of the work that we've done, and we know that there's not really a day goes by that we don't get tagged about something to do with them. But it's when sometimes they're basically dismissed, or there's some subtle comments to ignore them, or it's just kind of erase the fact that they're there. And that, I think, is born out of jealousy, and maybe people looking to, I suppose, to fill a space, and I suppose it's elbows out. And Emma mentioned about, it's like people are in a competition. I agree. And that the laugh of it is, I'm like, I'm not entered into a competition. I'm disqualified. I'm not even in the game. So like, don't compete with me.
Yeah. And Grainne, you mentioned earlier on your childhood, and said that you referenced your childhood for a reason, that it was completely a surprise to you once you entered this world of clinicians and physios. Was there anything unusual about your childhood that?
Well, I'm one of five. I'm a middle child, Joe. I don't know if that, from a coach's perspective, if you're starting to flag a few things there. No, I'm a
No, it
middle
wasn't like
child,
one
and I'm
of
very
my.
much middle children, and possibly again that idea of just going and doing what I decide to do, even if it's against the grain, because I do think there's a sense of the middle child semi rears themselves because not that you're overlooked a little bit, but anyway, that it was. I came up as one of five in a really close family, and you know what? I had a really happy childhood. You know, sometimes I suppose I look back now and I realize how lucky I am because not everybody has a positive childhood experience, and I again being quite green and naive to that because but we were brought up probably just to champion and value other people, and I think that comes through. Like you do, all your childhood experiences do help formulate the person you become when you're older. Um, and so much so, and I don't know if it's particularly an Irish thing or a Northern Irish thing, but like if anything, self-promotion is something that we would have been brought up that you don't self-promote, like, you know,
Right.
you champion other people, and so much so that mom, you know, I would see now, even if people are going, oh, I seen about your growing, you're seeing about this, and mommy literally belittle it. Oh yeah, she's just doing a wee thing, or you know, whatever. And that's just the nature of the job. So you definitely wouldn't get a big head in my upbringing. But you were definitely brought in that you help people and you elevate people and you support people, and there's that real community aspect. So then I come into this world where people are elbows out and out for themselves and maybe do have a big head, and I'm like, what is this world?
Yeah. And so for you, it sounds like collaboration is that shining a light on somebody else and hopefully expecting that they would do the same for you, and raising somebody up. So this, I have to bring honesty into this and recognize that I know sometimes I see people's successes, and bless her, Felicity, I think, said exactly these words when I was talking to her about failure. She said, you know, sometimes I see people, they'll tweet about the fact they've just found the cure for something that we've all been trying to, or the treatment program for something we've trying to been solve for ages. And there's a little part of me that's just like, I so want to be happy for you. I really want to be happy for you, but I'm not. And I bless
So
it. You know, I can so identify with that. You know, there are times where I'm like, oh, I wish I'd done that.
Yes.
Or, oh, okay, what can I do now that is a bit like that? And it kicks in, doesn't it? And you know, you do well, you know, maybe I'm tarring you two with a brush, which isn't fair. But I know personally there is a process I have to go through sometimes, like, oh, okay, Joe, yeah, that's an interesting thought going through your head at the moment. Where's that come from then? What's that triggering in you? And
I 100% get that. You know, I'll see something and I'll think, oh God, that was a great idea. Well done. Damn you for coming up with that. But sometimes then you just have to check yourself and say, right, stay in your lane. You know, stay with what your focus is. And I think it helps having a focus as well. I don't think you're human, surely. I can't believe that there's no human on this planet that doesn't get that little bit of, damn it, if only I thought of that sort of, you know, that sort of thing. Lots of people wouldn't admit to it though. But I do think it's quite a human response when you see someone has had success and you want that and you think, oh, you know what, if only I'd thought of it. I think it's fair. It's okay to feel like that. It's just what you do with that feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, if it spurs you on then to address something that is in your lane, which goes very well with what I was saying about the coaching approach, wasn't it? Once you've decided what your lane is, you know, Grainne, I think you live that beautifully. You found your lane. It was a lane that you had to almost kind of talk yourself that it was okay to be in, but once you stayed in it. And then you're not, it's not just like every bright shiny thing that everyone else is doing is relevant to your lane. But the other thing is, I know we talked about when we had that long conversation beforehand, how possibly physio in particular attracts people who have a reasonably competitive approach to life, even as, you know, maybe not necessarily competitive personality, but I don't know, by the mere nature of just getting into physio school in the first place requires a bit of you know, focus, shall we say, doesn't it? Do you think it's any more than other professions? Is it just that, you know, this is the one we're in, so this is what we see?
I think you're right that in a lot of professions that are quite competitive to get into, they bring people of that competitive nature, because you do have to have a little bit of that grit to kind of to excel or to put yourself forward. Um, and to me, I suppose because a lot of the people I'm exposed to are in the physiotherapy realm, it seems like physio is just toxic with it. But I do think it definitely exists. And sometimes when I talk to other people and be like, oh my goodness, like sometimes our profession is just actually smothering with competitiveness. People relate to that, even though they're in a different profession, and they get exactly what I'm saying. So I do think it exists in other places.
Yeah.
But I suppose something that I'm trying to get better at is to just nearly kind of to take a different route, nearly to bypass and to not give airtime or to not give focus or to not let that sort of behavior impact me, and just to kind of be, as you say, nearly kind of to be focused on my own goals and what I want to do or what we are doing collectively. But I don't know if it does have more, or perhaps you could look at it a different way. A lot of people do go into physio because they have the sports view in mind. And I think that usually they're participants in sport to some degree too. And I do think that brings a competitive breed of people. So they could be.
Yeah, the competitive breed, and also I was really sporty, but I used to drive, tennis was my sport, and I drove my tennis coach mad because he was constantly telling me that I didn't care enough whether I won the match. And he's absolutely right, I didn't. I damn well cared whether my backhand looked beautiful when I hit it and it felt brilliant and it was the best backhand that anyone ever hit. But, if the next shot was a bit rubbish and I lost the game, I didn't care because that backhand was amazing. But I think that, and that carries through that, I'm pretty hard on myself on a performance level, and I want the things I do to be really good quality, but I don't actually care whether I win the ultimate prize. I don't think. Maybe I'm being disingenuous, but I think there's quite a lot of that self-drive, and that can be quite exhausting, can't it, if that's part of your makeup. I see a lot of that in clinicians.
I'm laughing because I used to play a lot of tennis, Joe. I'd play a game of tennis someday. I'm a lefty though. I'm a high. People used to hate playing me because they had their game plan sorted out for right-handed people, and then in comes me.
Yeah, my beautiful backhand you just love it. You'd be at
I'd love it, please.
All right, you're on.
The thing is, I guess competitiveness is healthy to a point, but how do you think how do we improve its toxicity? How do we stop that happening in our profession? Because in truth, I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to push it back over to you, Joe. Have you any thoughts on that?
Well, I love what Grainne just said about awareness. I think that's the first stage, is to realize it's happening. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the only person you can control. And Grainne just said she sees that stuff out there, so she isn't going to feed it. She's going to see that it's there and decide not to put more fuel behind it. And then what I heard in Grainne's words were, and then go back to, what was my focus again? Is this relevant?
Yeah.
If it is, let's get in conversation with this person, see what I can learn, see what can go on here. If not, just forget it and move on and get back on what
you're doing.
Yeah, and that certainly isn't the solution for all of it. I was thinking, what would we advise students, if they're, or people newly qualified listening to this? We may not be painting the most colourful picture of what lies ahead for them. But I don't know, I was trying to think, was I aware of that, or did it bother me early in my career, or has it come later? I don't know if you guys would reflect on that. I don't know, to me it felt like the early part of my career was just lots of, I need to gather more knowledge, and I need skills, and I need to keep filling this toolkit up, and then I'll be, I don't know what, okay, whatever okay was. I think then I probably did feel in my lane, because it didn't seem to matter so much what everybody else was doing, because everyone else was learning as well, or I was junior, so I wasn't expected to be expert. It almost feels like these problems, certainly in my career, came in, I don't know, 10 years in, maybe. Maybe in my head I suddenly decided I needed to be something that hadn't been there before. I don't know if maybe we should address that question. If you would, talking to students now, what advice would you give your student self, or newly qualified self?
Probably to stick to your guns and to follow your goals, even if they aren't the same goals as the general crowd, because we don't all have to go and do the same thing. And the beauty of the physiotherapy profession is that it's so diverse. Like you're sitting talking to people who have quite diverse roles in it amongst this podcast. So Joe, you've managed to merge two worlds that you love, and the work that me and Emma are doing, we're doing both clinical and then with kind of other facets to it. And even within that, me and Emma do slightly different things at times in our own world. So it's I think sometimes actually, and I've got this conversation has come up a little bit more because my husband actually was a physiotherapist, and his most recent role was as an extended scope physiotherapist, first contact physio, but he never was as happy in physiotherapy, or he never got as much out of it as I suppose what he would think I get out of it, or he would see how content or how I obviously do get a lot of it. I do like it. So we're talking about a lot of the negative stuff, but I get such an amount of reward, and I really, there's so much give back, and there's so much things that I love about what I do. And so we often discussed over the years, or he was like, I don't think I get the same satisfaction of things. And we put it down to the fact that pelvic health and MSK maybe are two very different worlds, because he was like, you know what, I'm listening to people who are in pain all day. They're coming in pain and then they get better, but when they get better, you're discharging them. So whereas yes, we're in pelvic health, we're dealing with people who are having symptoms, but as soon as you start with that first session, people are just so happy that you are listening about a really taboo topic that they have struggled with for so long, and if someone actually wants to listen to this and they understand it. So from the get-go, we get a reward because that appreciation is there. And when someone gets better, they, even if they want to cancel a review or something, they ring up to tell you how thankful they are because now they are dry, or they don't have pain with intercourse, or whatever the symptoms were. And there's a huge appreciation. So I probably took that for granted because I went into my career quite young in pelvic health, and that's just been my norm. But he was like, I get people complaining about pain, you rehab them, and he goes, and then if they cancel, they don't ring me to thank me. They usually go, oh, it just got better. I just woke up and it's better. And they don't every time attribute it to thank you for the rehab that you give me. And, so he said that he often doesn't get the satisfying thing. Anyway, long-winded version of me telling you, he took a career change. He finally bit the bullet. I thought he was having a midlife crisis. We were in business together and I was like, we built quite a nice business here. I don't really understand. And he went into, now wait to hear this for a laugh. He did a master's. I said, right, do your master's and train up while you're still a physio. So he did it, and I thought that would put him off. He did it while he did his independent prescribing and his injection therapy.
Master. She challenges everyone.
But he did a master's in computer program and data analysis at the same time, and loved it because, as in his words, unlike healthcare, programming is either 100% right or 100% wrong, and that was his lane. He likes that. He likes to be, now he's like, you could spend a couple of days where your code's not working, so every day you're 100% wrong, then you get that day and you're 100% right, and everything is good, and it's a real buzz. So he is now fully left the physiotherapy profession, and he is in that. But what we discuss quite often is that he's applied before he got his job there recently, he has been applying and putting CVs, and the interview and selection process is very different than in the physiotherapy world.
Yeah.
And you can have a degree from multiple different backgrounds to go for this one job, and you have to show how your skills can be applied rather than just having a BSc honours in physio or masters in physio. And that they usually physio interviews are very structured, and that there's buzzwords and there's certain things. He was just like, we need to be more diverse. Like, why can't you use your physio degree to apply skills and do X, Y, or Z? And I was like, yeah, that's really true. So that's why I've probably felt like I can diversify a little bit more, because I've been really inspired by what he's doing in ways. So they're fun fact. Not that for anyone listening to this, you don't have to leave the physiotherapy profession. He never liked it to the degree. When I look back now, I can see, I don't know how I didn't see this coming sooner. And you know what? At our age in life, he was very brave to make that jump, because you can often think, well, I'm in it this long now and I've really skilled up to the point, I've done so much training that it's too late to leave.
It's not actually with a successful business as well. That's a really brave move to make.
It's a brave move because if we're being really honest, like he'll take a step back in even income to follow the world. Whereas when you're running a busy clinic, if you work hard, you can earn well. But he was like, I don't want to work this hard in this profession for the rest of my life. And he's like, I want to do something different now. So we made the decision to do it. And I suppose he's happier. So that's good.
Do you think he'll ever go back?
No, but I do now. This is not that I'm in the control group, but I was like, keep your HPC pre-registration. I was like, no, Kim, and he was like, I don't need to pay for that. I was like, pay for it, just in case. But I thought that I was glad that he did it the way he did it, and he trained up while, like, I was like, do your masters, and if you like it, we'll see. And look at I could see the buzz out of it. Even when he was training, he loved it. And I was just like, right, okay, it's not just a case that he thinks the grass is greener, and he's found what he wants to do, and it works. And a lot of the skills, actually, he actually got in his most recent interview, a lot of the skills that he brings are probably skills born as a physiotherapist in a way, like our communication, our ability to relate and read the room and different things like that. So there's a lot of strengths that he can bring into it. So it's interesting. I'm actually really loving analysing kind of like the transition of this, actually, and how it's going.
When I the more I work with clinicians, I had this belief anyway, but they just reinforce to me every time this belief I have that, sorry, we keep saying physiotherapist, just that the three of us are, but to be a physio requires such a diversity of skills. And I think we've talked about perhaps some of the more tricky traits that accompany the type of person that goes into healthcare, but equally, I honestly believe that most physios could have a blooming good stab at most other professions if they wanted to. They wouldn't be the worst person in the room for most things. And that kind of, we should have that kind of self-belief. And as Grainne says, you don't have to leave the profession, but if we've touched on today how part of being a good collaborator, or even just a good person maybe, is that kind of comfort with yourself. And I would say, if you've got into physio school, if you even got past that hurdle, you must have a pretty solid set of reliable skills. And maybe that's what I'd say to students. If you've got that far, have confidence in what is already there for you. And as Grainne says, if you then want to diversify and find what really make it work for you, but keep that self-belief, because just getting over that first hurdle is makes you a particular type of person.
You know what's funny too is that when this transition of my husband's came about, my initial thing was like, but like, what will people think? And that was my first, that was my, I suppose in many ways, my weakness was like, what does that look like? Like, what will people think? Wow. He was like, I don't care. Because he's, again, in many ways, many of the stuff you're talking about, Joe, I'm like, oh my goodness, Patrick should have went into life coaching or something, because if I was having, I suppose, in the earlier days when I would have struggled more with the likes of people being maybe not supportive or not collaborative, and I couldn't understand this, he would very much be like, they're not your focus, don't worry about them, or like, don't let them annoy you. And I was like, how can I not let it annoy me? I just don't understand how people would be so, that's mean, and I would never be mean to anyone else. And he was like, don't worry about it. And I was like, so you're saying if this situation happened to you, you wouldn't be annoyed? He's like, wouldn't think about it. And I genuinely wouldn't. It would not stress him one bit. But hey, again, I was like, what will people think? Like, we've developed a really nice business, and then if you take a cream, what does that look like? And he's like, what does that matter what other people think? And I was like, well, it does. And then but I finally got there with he graduated me into it gradually. And
sorry, carry on, Grainne.
No, I was only just going to say, it's funny because reflecting back, like, why is a lot of our decision making based on societal perceptions? Like, because if he hadn't, like, the decision he made is a great decision, and it's great for all of us, and it's taught me a lot. But like, if I had been the person who was really like, no, you can't, because you're a physio and that's what you've identified for as the last 15 years, and you don't now turn and change career, like, that's ridiculous. And if I had not supported that would have been such a shame. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look back and think, gosh, like, why wouldn't he? Like, the world's our oyster, and we're here to be happy, and we do have like decades of work ahead of ourselves, and like we can maybe give so much more to the world in different ways. But it's easy to get trapped into these boxes nearly where like, but you're a physio and that's just it. Like that's all you are. You're a physio.
There's I frequently quote a physio who said to me once, I feel like a stick of rock cut me open and all you'll see is the word physio. but you're right, it doesn't have to be like that.
No, it doesn't. But without stereotyping, do you think that's a bit of a female versus male mindset? Because my husband's very similar to Grainne's. When I'm stressing about the competitiveness or I'm not doing well enough, etc., the poor guy, you can imagine how beaten his brain is with my negativity. But sometimes that is always his standard response. Don't worry about it, Emma. It doesn't matter. Focus. Stay in your own lane. It doesn't matter what others think. It doesn't matter what others say. But I sometimes wonder if that's because he's a guy and he can, I don't know, he's perhaps not as emotional. And I'm genuinely, I'm not meaning stereotype here, but I wonder, is there a difference in how men and women think? Because I don't always get the impression, and I'm sure I'm going to be, people listening will say how wrong I am, but I don't get the impression that male physios are as competitive as women, female physios. No, am I wrong?
Well, I don't know. I sometimes follow the MSK world on Twitter, and it is absolute, like, it is just like, sometimes that's, oh my goodness.
That's
brutal,
actually. Yeah. So basically, I'm wrong.
I think you're both right in that context. And I, just to add balance, my husband is sorry, Ian, to air this. He is he's emotionally aware and intelligent, and we don't fit particularly into typical gender roles, I don't think. And actually, Grainne, when you were talking just now, I noticed you used the words, you said society gives us this impression, and Ian's always pulling me up for using the word patriarchy too much, and I get it, because I think women, we know what we mean by the patriarchy, and we also know these days it's a lazy shorthand term for a societal set of, I'm going to stumble over my words, but it's kind of a societal move that women buy into as much as men sometimes. And I also remember when we first started talking that we said, let's have this conversation, that came out of strong women. But in the clinician world, I in my clinic, there are men and women, and I see amongst the male physios the whole spectrum of personalities, and some that you might class as typically more female traits, and some more alpha male. And I think you see all of it in. I think there's more of a clinician stereotype maybe rather than a male female stereotype, but then there's extremes of that as well, and that the alpha comes into the clinician world as well. I was going to, sort of as we move towards the end of the podcast, going to ask you both if you feel things are changing, because I shouldn't answer the question before I ask you, but people often say to me in coaching, I'm really worried about social media, and specifically I'm worried about Twitter with physiotherapy. And we all know that, Twitter wars can get absolutely brutal and unbearable. But I have to say, I've been fairly new to Twitter, but I see quite a nice thread coming through as well from male and female clinicians. And I sort of sense that there's a big swathe of us that want the same thing and are starting to be a bit more vocal. I don't know what your experience is with.
I think you have to pick your tribe with social media and delete the negativity. I personally don't. I'm on Twitter, but I don't get too involved because I'm nervous of it. I'm nervous of expressing my views and the response I'll get. And I think people have, lots of physios, male physios as well as female physios, have got very strong views. And I don't necessarily agree with everything I hear, but I I don't have the confidence to share my views for fear of, having the comments that I don't want to hear. So I think for me, I mute those. I still read those views, but I mute them. I don't interplay with them. But that's just where I'm comfortable. And I think I do the same with Instagram. To be honest, if it's a negative feed, I unfollow it. Because you create what you see on social media, and if it's all negative, it's blooming draining, and it's toxic. So I think you have to be, you have to, as you pick your face-to-face and online tribes, you have to pick your social media tribes and look out for your own welfare with all of that. But the plus side, certainly for Twitter, my goodness, the amount of information and up-to-date research information you can get at the drop of a hat is incredible. I think it's brilliant. And the same thing with Instagram. It's an amazing platform to network with some really cool people. So it's opened up the world to us in so many ways. But of course, there's always a negative to something that's very positive as well. So you just have to be quite, look out for yourself and be mindful of who you're following and how you're commenting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's about surrounding yourself with the like-minded people. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned over the years, is just to kind of just not engage with people who that's not the way I see things. And I think that's relevant. And also to remember that social media and things are only a snapshot in time, most likely, of someone's best angle or filtered angle, whether that's through a message or whether that's through a picture. It's not real life. And even things today, like if any of you are like following, even say Emma, like you have said about at times you struggle with confidence or imposter syndrome, but if you wouldn't know it, you wouldn't know it. That's what I mean. Like, because and people, you're so inspiring and you have so many strengths and so much to give and offer, but there's something really nice about hearing that human side of things, and that, like, oh my goodness, like, because for anyone listening to this who is having the same sort of doubts themselves, it's like, oh my goodness, well, she has these sort of feelings and look at how successful she is, so I can do that too, and it gives people the confidence maybe to follow their goals. So I think that's lovely.
100%. Remember, social media, smoke and mirrors. We can all put on a social media face.
I can't. I'm still trying to learn my
trying to create your social media face.
But I think it's not all what it seems, and lots of people on there are full of self-doubt, and I think it's really important not to put people on social media on a platform, a pedestal, as well. We're all doing what we're doing to get a positive message across to hopefully improve the health of men and women, and some of us have mastered that more because we've put more time into it than others, but it's something that all of us can do if you've got a little bit of time to put aside. And don't compare. That's a really important thing to do. And I think reach out to people that you like on social media as well, and see if they want to do collaborative work with them, because we're all human, we're quite open to doing that, but don't put them on a pedestal, because it's lovely that for example, I've got quite a few followers on Instagram. Definitely doesn't make me any better than anyone else who's maybe got 10 or 15 followers on Instagram. So followers don't make you the best physio, the best person out there, and so I'm always a bit blown away when people say, oh my goodness, you're amazing, and I think, well, no, I'm not doing anything you're different to what you're doing. I just put a bit more time onto my social media than maybe you do.
I think you're underplaying that a bit, Emma, and I think you have to recognize your strengths too, because like we're talking about, Joe had mentioned earlier about physios could often apply themselves to so many other sectors or things. Like, you are very good in that Instagram, in that social media, in that public eye. Like, you could have easily been in media, because there's strengths there, like, and they're qualities and strengths. So they're not things to belittle and say that everyone could do that, because everyone can't. Some people are just clunky behind the camera and they just can't, it's just, that's a strength. So I think you have to master that too. But it's strengths and diversity on top of physio. It's
Yeah.
it's what you can bring to it, and that's huge.
I agree, and I think that would be my final word as well, that collaboration, when it truly works, is in the nicest possible way. There's something in it for both of you. Like, you collaborate with someone who shares your views but brings something that you haven't got to the table, which you two are an absolutely brilliant example of. And almost then collaboration's a no-brainer, isn't it? So it's not somebody saying, oh, I like what you've got and I want a piece of it, and I'm going to hang off you. It's, I agree with you on your basic foundations, and this is my take on it, and this is what I can bring to it. And that feels a really strong, comfortable collaboration.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. We could go on, couldn't we? Shall we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
Oh, I've loved that. That just felt like a lovely coffee with both of you.
I know, it was just a natural conversation.
Oh,
I
that's
kind of
lovely.
forgot we were recording there. It's nice. I always like conversations, Gav. They're just authentic, good chat. And Joe, you're very good. You're a good chatter. I like
Good
I like
chat.
your chat.
I love your chat, and I love your background as well.
Yeah, you went away and we were like, oh my goodness, she's got a lovely stage background. It's beautiful.
You know, we are still recording at the moment.
Oh yeah, we have.
That's
I'm glad
okay.
you like my background. All right, thank you so much,
Thanks,
girls.
Jenny.
I
So
am going
nice
to
to
stop
talk to you.
recording now. Take care.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye. What a great conversation with two fantastic women. I really enjoyed that, and we covered a lot of ground. You may have agreed with some or all of what we've said. I expect you disagreed with some or maybe all of what we said. I'd be really interested to hear from you, whether you are a man, a woman, clinician, patient. There's all sorts of angles to come at the issues of competition, collaboration, and how that works for different people. So if you want to get in touch with me, either to comment on this episode or to investigate coaching, then please do contact me via the MeHab channels. You can look on the website www.mehab.co.uk. If you would like to contact Grainne or Emma, then you can access them via the At Your Cervix podcast, or we will put their contact details in the show notes. So as ever, let us know what you thought. Tune in for the next episode. And if you are a busy male or female clinician trying to be all things to all people all day, every day, then take a break, stop, breathe, because you matter.